and the applicant is not intending on sprinkling the homes. Outstanding items for us, really, I would like to just, even if it's a short response back to Mr. Straub, respond back with a couple of his comments. And we have the outstanding impact statement that we'd like to get to you. But other than that, there are a couple things, again, that I noted I'd like to discuss with the board. And then if there's anything else the board would like, we'd like to know that so that we would know how to move ahead with the project.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Berry. Let me add a couple of things to your list. And when you say responding back to CMA's letter, at the last meeting, I had made a request that you provide a written response to all department comments and the specific CMA's comments, and not just in a general term, but specifically to each and all comment. If you could provide that, that would be very helpful as we go through and discuss with CMA some of those responses, and some of the elements that you had asked the board that are we will still have to consult with our road agent and with CMA on some of the things that you are responding to, and specifically when it comes to the offsite impacts, as you indicate. You know, we want to make sure that it is a fair and equitable discussion that we do have about impacts and what it does, this proposed development does have to the town. So we want to have a very intelligent conversation, but at this point we're not able to until we have the discussions specifically with the road agent and CMA. So once we see those formal responses, we can initiate those conversations. And then another element is the drainage component, and just have a question on that. And does the end of pipe include the closed drainage system within the roadway? Would that be a portion of the HOA's responsibility, or would that be the town's responsibility? In your opinion, or in the HOA's planning that you're looking at?
We've always had those components be part of the town or municipality's responsibility because it directly affects the town's proposed infrastructure. Whereas if you say a detention pond isn't maintained for whatever reason, you know, water will fill up and move over the emergency spillway. There's probably likely any harm to the roadway. If a catch basin is not maintained the way it should be, then there could be impact to the roadway. So we've always been involved in projects where the municipality or town would take that specific infrastructure.
Yeah, and please respect that this is a very rural town. We don't have a lot of catch basins and drainage systems that are closed. The majority of those are on state highways. So again, I want to defer and have a conversation with our Public Works Department to clarify their comment about, and I guess I'm paraphrasing this as having something too complex that they do not have the ability to maintain. So I want to have that conversation with them as well. And if in that response, if you could just describe what you had mentioned, you know, that the HOA is looking, the applicant is willing to take the end of pipe from right away into the stormwater management areas, or some language of that would help. And I just want to mention there are some public on this meeting, and we will have a public hearing, but in this meeting, and I just want to make sure you guys just be patient. We have a few more things just to go through, and I want to hear from the board as well of concerns that they had or questions regarding the application. So with that, I would open it up to board members of any, I guess, additional specific questions that have not been brought up in the review comments to this point that would have concerns or that the applicant should address either now or in the future meeting.
Chairman, this is Mr. Veal. Oh, sorry, I'm also jumping in.
Go ahead, Gary.
Okay, no, I just had a clarification. I thought Mr. Berry mentioned 1.5 base on the roadways, but I wanted to clarify that. I didn't quite hear that.
So we're proposing a 2.5-inch base pavement, and then 1.5 inch top course of pavement. So you'd have 4 inches of total pavement.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure if you said 1.5 or 2.5. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Veal. At this point, are you looking for kind of like more thorough, like notes on more, like a more thorough review, or just kind of like a touch point on some of the items that we haven't discussed?
Probably touch points on items that haven't been discussed. I mean, I think there's some things that, you know, some additional engineering that might need to happen to answer some of these, or some additional analysis. But yeah, I mean, I do have some of my own, but please go ahead if you have specific comments, ask away. And Mr. Berry, if he needs to defer those to another time, then that's okay.
Okay. So a couple of things. I know the applicant had mentioned the, you know, us discussing the possibility of, you know, Mitchell Road itself. I think one thing that could help with in that discussion is I think we did a traffic count on it in 2019. And I also know we had some data about, you know, when a gravel road kind of gets to the point of exceeding its life as a gravel road and when it should be paved. I know the town, we had some discussion on Ledge Farm Road, another separate road. I don't know where that data is, but I think that would be kind of helpful as to where kind of that break point is to between what the traffic count is now, what the additional proposed traffic will possibly be, and everything. So I think going forward, we should just have some of that information available. Overall, just kind of comments on the plan. I think some of the design right now, you know, given that we have a lot of wetlands in this area, we need to be really cognizant of our wetland overlay district. In the zoning ordinance, Article 3, and what's considered inharmonious uses of land, and whether or not like drainage structures are considered, you know, okay within the buffer zone. We talked about the environmental impact analysis, what he's got, or they're going to do. Another area in the zoning ordinance talks about if the subdivision is accessed via a designated scenic road, that mitigating measures shall be taken to preserve the scenic qualities of such road. The measures may balance the requirements for safety, health, but should only minimally consider economic expediency. So I think that's another thing we need to be cognizant of, is being on that road, you know, for the site walk or going there, it is very rural looking right now. So I think we have to be cognizant of buffers and to try to maintain the aesthetic that's there now.
Ed, can I just interrupt you?
Yep.
Just because we're on that, I really have not seen anything in this application that addresses the scenic road. I mean, it is a scenic road. We have these for purposes of maintaining rural character. And I think you really need to relook at how the frontage is put on Mitchell Road. Right now you have about 40% of the frontage of trees that will be removed, and drainage stormwater management and other components that are right up against this scenic road, one of the town's scenic roads, one of 8. So it is a very important aspect to our community. And so I implore you that relook at that, take a look at buffers, and some of actually your drainage detention ponds are outside the limits of your property. So, and it's within the roads right of way, that has to get pulled out. That can't be within the road right of way. So there's things like that you really need to look through our regulations, as well as I wasn't sure, but I haven't seen any dimensioning on the driveways. So on scenic roads, our driveways, and I know you have 3 lots that are outside the subdivision that are directly on Mitchell Road. Those driveways have to be 300 feet apart, and I don't see that separation. And one of the driveways that I can see is about 250 feet away from the main access street. So these are kind of things that we as a rural community, is really important to us, and you need to address those.
I had that same, the buffer. So on scenic roads, there's a mention of at least a 25-foot buffer. And in my mind, that means it probably should kind of look the way it does now. And at least to the west entrance of Stone Gray Drive, the proposed west entrance of it, with the drainage areas that are there proposed now, that buffer would be gone.
Yeah, and all you have to do is read our planning, our master plan. There's a lot of language in there on how the town likes to see its scenic roads.
And then I had a couple of items on just kind of specific lots. Lot 1 or proposed lot 1N-11. It shows the 75-foot wetland setback. I don't know if the 50-foot is needed as well, or if it. And then for lots, proposed lot 1N-11 again and 1N-10. I would recommend considering changing the shape to eliminate that reverse L shape, to try to make it more of a standard layout, unless there's a need for it. And then lastly, proposed lot 1N-13, there's a 25% or greater slope, which appears to be within the lot envelope, but that's non-buildable. So I just want to make sure that the actual 30K area exists. And there's a few other lots I think that are like that as well. And then I guess lastly, just kind of overall, with a lot of these lots, if they're right up to like 2 acres, but a good chunk of the lot is proposed to have a drainage easement, I don't know if that really fits the intent of the lot, where, the lot size. And I know the board has the ability under our jurisdiction to increase lot sizes or require additional land as needed. So I think the board should consider that, depending on what happens with those drainage easements.
I would agree on those easements. I mean, even though they are have written protection on it and potentially some signage, if a landowner, say 2 or 3 times sold down the line, that property owner may respect or may think that that's their property, they can do what they want with it. So, we need to make sure that they have enough room to do what they want. Any other board members? Gary, you had a comment?
Yeah, just one more thing to add to the scenic roads, especially referring to the culvert that, was the plan to raise the roadway. So especially that, to give special consideration to that scenic road there.
Yeah, and I guess, Mr. Berry, you had indicated that you were going to redo that part of Mitchell Road, or to get that culvert in. It wasn't shown on the plan as that, so I just wanted to see what the intent was.
There's a specific plan and profile of Mitchell Road in that area that shows the small amount of gravel that we would bring into that area to raise the grade.
For the culvert crossing?
Yes. There's a specific plan and profile that we showed just for Mitchell Road.
Okay, thank you. Any other board members have some comment or question?
Mr. Chair, my comments were they are basically echoing Mr. Veal's comments. Mine were on the mostly the westerly connection of Stone Grade Drive with Mitchell Road. The proposed design results in about 300 plus feet of open, no trees in that area. And I also noted that the pond looks like a secondary storage pond 7P. Looks like it includes storage within the town right away. And that was kind of my biggest areas, that detention pond on the west side of the road also looked like it did make that lot 1N-2. It seems like the house might be able moved, but it is right up against that, so it's more of just that pond takes up a large portion of that property. So Mr. Veal already touched on everything else.
And just, those are, well, sometimes those are green, those are sometimes brown, and they don't have trees in them.
Right. So there's, these definitely have, doesn't look like there's very large berms with benches on the top to really incorporate evergreens or new plantings. So I just have concern about, removing such a large swath of trees, especially on this section of the roadway where it's entirely wooded right now.
Right, and one of the cuts is about 10 feet deep. Thank you, Ian. Any other board members?
Mr. Chairman, this is Susan. I just have a quick question. When we did the site walk with Mr. Hayden, Mr. Veal requested that the driveway locations along Mitchell Road be staked so we can see where they are. Has that been done?
That hasn't been done yet, but we can certainly take care of that.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's always just helpful for the board and any abutters or anybody else that's going by to be able to kind of get a visual as to where driveways or roadways are kind of proposed to have their curb cuts.
Yeah, I think the roadways were pretty well delineated. It was just the few driveway locations. Just hang some flagging in a tree.
Can I just clarify one thing, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
We're only proposing one, other than the two road cuts, we're only proposing one additional driveway cut on Mitchell Road. It seems, it's certainly in your presentation, it seemed as though you referred to multiple.
Yeah, well, the plan that I'm looking at, the grading plan ends right at one of the driveways, and no other plan has a driveways plan on it, so I couldn't really tell where any of those other driveways. And if you're referring to that there is a single shared driveway that accesses the two lots, maybe that's what you're referring to. I couldn't tell if there was a third lot to this to the west of that. But even in that event, it's still only 250 feet from the intersection of the roadway.
Of Stone Grade Drive. Okay.
Yeah. Or thereabouts. I mean, you'll have to measure it out. Just make sure it's 300 feet.
Understood.
Sorry, and not to beat it, but I just want to make sure that I made this point. So under the zoning ordinance, where it talks about pollution control, in wetlands specifically, it specifically states no other structure shall be built or maintained less than 50 feet horizontal from poorly drained or 75 feet horizontal from any very poorly drained soils. So I think we need to consider when it says no other structure, if that includes drainage structures or not. And if these are within those setbacks, if any of the proposed easements are within the setbacks.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Berry.
The problem with that interpretation is that that's not how it has been interpreted in the town of Nottingham in the past. Drainage structures really need to be in close proximity to the wetlands and the wetland buffer to allow you to capture stormwater at as close to the lowest point in the crossing as possible. So I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure how to answer that other than, I guess, in that fashion. Stormwater features have not been considered structures in the past.
Yeah, I know. I understand, Mr. Berry, and I think you know, a lot of the, you know, we have drainage outfalls and you know, sometimes, you know, head walls and some other things that are within that drainage or within that 75 feet of a wetland that I think we would need some thought to this of whether, you know, we're structures mean drainage structures. Because otherwise we wouldn't be able to discharge, you know, overflows and such. And just want to make sure that we're keeping that available to do.
Mr. Veal's point is well taken, though. If in the event we could slide even if it's just a concrete outlet structure, if the availability was there to move it outside of the buffer, we'll certainly take a look at that. You know, in an effort to adhere most closely to the ordinance if possible.
Yeah, let me just ask, Ed, is there a specific instance where you see them? Or maybe we should just ask Mr. Berry to make sure that, you know, if he can point those out where they're within the 50 feet and 75 feet.
In my writings back to the board, I can discuss each pond, and then if there are improvements that can be made, you know, make the improvement and bring that back to the board if you'd like.
Yeah. Yep, that would be helpful, because there is maybe just an option to, you know, pull it back a little bit. Anybody else on the board that would like to make comment or questions? This won't be the last time. I mean, we do have more information that the applicant will be submitting, but if there are thoughts or things that can help guide the applicant, it would be good to have those now. And then I do want to make sure that there's some time here for the public to comment as well. So let me know if there's anything from the board. Go ahead, Steph.
I just wanted to address the traffic counts comment that Ed made. I believe SRPC did do traffic counts on Mitchell Road in 2017, so I can look into that and provide that information to the board and to the public and Mr. Berry. And then I don't know about 2019, but I of course will look into that as well.
I believe the town did some counts in 2019 of all the gravel roads. So that data might be available as well. And that might fit in with what Mr. Berry had counted as well.
I think that was done by the select board though. So maybe Tyler could take that as a takeaway project. See if the select board has that data, or Chris.
Will Monday.
Okay.
Thank
you.
This is Joe Clough. I actually have the 2017 numbers right here. Mitchell Road east of Smoke Street, the seasonal average weekday count was 261 vehicles.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, as part of our traffic analysis, we did have a professional count done. It measured not only total daily volumes, but AM, PM, and vehicular speeds. So if the town doesn't have as detailed information as that, then our traffic analysis submitted to you does have it for use also.
Do you recall the date of those counts?
I don't recall.
Was it fall or spring?
It would have been the. I don't want to guess.
Okay, that's fine. I didn't have the traffic. We'll look that up. Okay, so
so another in the zoning ordinance, just in case a variance might be needed. In the definitions, there's a specific definition for inharmonious use of wetlands. And states that in cases of uncertainty, the use shall be denied and determined upon appeal by the ZBA. So I don't know if that even just means that where they're going to have to do some this proposed fill to construct a roadway besides the state permit, if they'd have to actually get a zoning variance as well.
Can you cite that?
Sorry, so it's specifically in the definition. There's a definition in the zoning ordinance. It's page 44, or was page 44.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'm just reviewing the traffic impact analysis that was submitted. It looks like the 2019 count was December 2019. So Thursday and Friday in December.
What dates?
12/12/2019 and 12/13/2019. That's on page 8 of 25 of the traffic impact analysis.
Okay, so more than likely those dates included times when school was in session.
Yes, they would have been in session as long as it was a Sunday.
Yeah, well, that's important.
Yes, we're very careful when we hire accurate counts that school is in session. And then I think, as you'll note in the analysis, that count is what's considered off-peak, as clearly a couple of you on the board know and understand. So we then peak that to a peak season. So we take those counts and then escalate it from there.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. So keep back into the inharmonious use. I feel like it ties back into under the under B, wetland conservation areas. There's specifically permitted uses listed out. In nothing in there mentions construction of a roadway or anything like that. It specifically states permitted uses that do not result in the erection of any structure or alter the surface configuration of land by the addition of fill or by dredging. such as forestry, agriculture, construction of well water supplies, wildlife habitat development, parks and such recreation, conservation areas, nature trails, and open space. So when you take that piece and then the inharmonious use definition, I feel like at least for this one piece to just tie things up, a variance would be needed as part of the process. For any fill or dredge.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if I should respond to that now or.
Let's do some digging on that, and we'll just, I want to clarify with the zoning board chairman, just to see if that is something that can be received. I want to get their opinion on that. If you have other response, you're more than welcome to it.
Oh.
So we will get back to you on that, Mr. Berry, just to clarify that.
Thank you.
All right, I want to get the public involved. I know that they're patiently waiting, so if board members can concede the floor, I would like to open the public hearing. And by doing this diligently as possible, it is a little difficult with Zoom. Steph, can you repeat how the procedure for us taking public comment? They can raise their hand, they can wave, they can, I don't know.
Yeah, so I'd like, if you're on Zoom, the desktop, if you open the participants or chat function, there is an option to raise your hand. If you can do it that way, that would be the easiest for me. I'll let the chairman know who has raised their hand, and we will unmute you. If you are on the phone, I believe there's also an option to raise your hand, and the same thing will go. I will, let the chairman know who has raised their hand, and I will unmute you. I just ask that you introduce yourself for the record, to make sure that we have, who's speaking, and we'll go from there.
And I would ask that the public address the comments to specifically myself, and then we can engage the applicant for answers if we need to. And if we can keep the comments to specific things that have not been discussed, or if they are concerns, please feel free, but this is your time to, talk about this application.
All right, we have Stephen Kerwood.
Great, please unmute Steve. Go ahead, Mr. Kerwood, can you hear me?
I can, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
And thank you for this thorough review that you've conducted here this evening. I think you've raised a number of really important questions that do need to be addressed. I do have a couple of questions. It's a little bit in the neighborhood of detail, but the road count issue, to what extent does it reflect the build out that this developer has also done at Maple Ridge? Because we notice that people are coming from that development, and Route 4 is closer to come by us than it is to go the other way. So it's a confusing time because of the virus and everything, but that development's been filling up. I think it just sold out. There seem to be even more cars. And so where 6 months ordinarily wouldn't make a difference, I just wonder if 6 or 7 months does make a difference. That's one question. I appreciate the comments on the scenic road and the nature of this. a lot of trees to lose there, and I appreciate the comments that have been made about that, and the question of having the homeowners association take on this interface with the water. Obviously, we're very concerned about that because we're at the bottom of the hill. So, any kind of issues that start to come forward there. Also, in terms of having a homeowners association and what might happen down the road, in terms of protection for the reptiles. So if a rough pavement is put in now, what is to prevent a few years down the road for somebody, you know, that road is awfully bumpy. Why don't we can we smooth that off and the next time we repave that? So what covenants might be possibly included to be sure that if the roadway are set so that it's okay for species to get across, that they still have that ability. We hope they're with us indefinitely and they don't go away. And then there was one other thing that I wanted to clarify. In the documents that were posted, the section that is labeled an email from Christopher Berry to Plan Zone on the 24th of June. In the historical review, he says that he will forward it to the board and HDHR post haste, which we heard this evening. But then he says the area of concern is larger than the formerly located stone, but not excessively, and that the standard cemetery buffer can easily be adhered to and an easement from the road to the site can be provided. What's the basis of those representations? Because tonight he said, oh, I can't tell you what the report says. So there's a conflict there. I don't understand why the representation is made in the email and we don't get the representation here tonight.
So,
and I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Just a moment. Hang on just a second.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to bug you having to come back more than.
Take your time. Steph, can you unmute him? Okay.
And is it possible for us to get a diagram of the proposed easements here? Can we get we need a plot plan for the proposed easements that would happen to protect the wetland areas. If we could get an up-to-date version of that. I don't know if we're allowed to ask about what's happening on the Barrington side, and if I have to go to Barrington to ask, but you know, water doesn't particularly care about political boundaries. So again, we appreciate the time and attention that you're paying to this. Is extremely important. The other issues that I would raise have been raised by the members of the board. I look forward to hearing what happens next. One general comment, and it may be too soon to even say this, but it seems like a lot of lots are being crammed onto this space, and that the number of problems that are being discussed here might be alleviated by simply not having to have as many buildable lots. But thank you so much for taking the time to listen and to dig into this and to make sure that the rural nature of our town is preserved and protected, while at the same time we make room for more people.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Kerwood. I'll try and address a couple of things there, and you might have to come back on to remind me what I left off, and I'll probably ask Mr. Berry a couple of questions here that might answer them. So relative to the traffic counts, Mr. Berry, I don't have the traffic study in front of me. Did that include the projected development fully developed out? And if not, if it was an active development, it should include it.
Is the question whether our traffic study contemplated our complete build out? Is that the question?
No, the question is whether, because Mr. Kerwood referred to an adjacent subdivision that was permitted, and was that added into the background counts of your existing?
It was not.
Okay.
So I assume they did a traffic analysis, we could add that into the background counts. Yes.
and that will, make sure that that development, because if it was fully developed out and this second subdivision came in at a later time, then there would be more traffic that they would have counted in their counting. So, anything that just turns out as what we call background counts. Let me try and answer the stone pavement, the roughness. Once the subdivision is complete, the roads get turned over to the town. And from then on, it is the town's responsibility to maintain them. So at that point, all we have is recommendations to the town, once that does get up for repavement, to include it with this rougher style pavement. There is nothing that the applicant or owner or HOA could do, and we can't have them, they wouldn't be responsible for that. But we do have Susan Mooney on the board here, who is an advocate for that rougher pavement, and she's also a Conservation Commission member, and the Conservation Commission does weigh in on this at a town level as well. The easements, they are shown on some of the drawings, or the drawings that we do have. The drawings are very dense and sometimes complex and confusing. There's just a lot of lines and a lot of numbers on them. That's just the nature of all of that information in one sheet of paper. And I guess I could, maybe it would help out if Mr. Berry were able to just shade in the areas that will be easements. And I probably missed something, but that's what I remember. Mr. Berry, could you add anything?
Sure. So we could do an easement sheet and take the easements off the standard subdivision plan. That way they're separated and it's a little less confusing for everybody. There's also the easements around the wetlands and wetland buffers that have not been added, so we can certainly add those. One of the first comments revolved around my statements on the historical stone. So there are two factors involved in that, and so we know from mapping on the ground where the limits of activity are underground, and that's been documented by the ground penetrating radar and has been mapped by survey location. But what I don't know is any of the other background information that Victoria will put inside of her report to us. And so that's the information that I don't want to try and discuss, because I don't have it. I physically do not have that report. But we do know from being on site where the limits of the actual site are in and around the stone.
And there is a requirement for a state buffer that is around that stone. Mr. Berry, could you share just if that area is within that buffer, or is it outside that buffer?
So the buffer that I showed originally around the stone would then get larger, because it's not just the stone that is now our sensitive area. We've now mapped a bigger sensitive area, and therefore that buffer gets a little bit bigger.
Okay. Mr. Kerwood, did that answer those questions? And I saw you raise your hand there.
No, it does. Yeah. So I was asking about the wetlands easement stuff, which I didn't see in the document. So that's great. If you could forward that to me or tell me where I could access that. And then the other, yes, I mean, the stone is such a mystery because, the history has come down orally and who really knows, but probably there were more bodies there from some pandemic situation. So not surprising that it's a bigger area than just by the stone. It may not be very clear, but so I'm grateful that the research is being done and the ground penetrating radar will give us a report. So that was so it will be a larger area. And we'll find out next time if it's, quote, not excessively. So thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Kerwood. Anybody else raise their hand there, Steph? Okay. So she's indicating there aren't any public that have additional comment. If you do, just please try and get one of ours attention. I'll give you another few seconds here.
I do have a question. Sorry, I just joined a little bit late, but I do have a question. My husband wasn't able to make it to the meeting tonight, but we are abutters at 4 Sutton Street.
Let me just interrupt you really quickly. I just want to get your name. Just to make sure we have it for the record.
Yep, it's my name is Mrs. Nicole Marvel, and my husband is Todd Marvel.
Okay, thank you.
And it's 4 Sutton Street. He was interested in knowing when we first moved in here, which was September of 2018. In October, it seemed like surveys were being done on the wetlands behind our house in that particular area. But we were just wondering, is that the only time that the wetland surveys were done? Because I know that in the spring, there's quite a bit more flow into those wetlands. So I'm just wondering if there's information about that we could review. He was just wondering, because when we've gone back there, it's just such a substantial amount of wetlands, that whole arm there that's behind our house, behind house 2 Sutton Street as well. So is that something that can be answered tonight, or is it something that you just don't have right with you? And
Well,
I'm sorry, that was wordy. If you want me to rephrase it, just let me know.
No. I think I'll just let Mr. Berry explain a little bit about the wetlands flagging, when those are done,
Yeah.
what constitutes a wetland. In general terms, it's not always wet. So there's other indicators. So, Mr. Berry.
So the Army Corps of Engineers in the state of New Hampshire, by adoption, has what's known as a 3-parameter approach. So a wetland is determined by certain poorly drained soils being within a certain distance of the surface. Soils indicators are historic. So though you might have a wet year and a dry year, the soil indicator isn't going to change year to year. It'll change over decades, if not longer.
Okay.
So that's one of the primary, well, all 3 are indicators, but that's really one of the primary indicators. One of the secondary indicator is plant life. So certain hydrophytic plants like what we call their feet wet. And so if the soil isn't wet enough for certain times of year, periods of time, those hydrophytic plants don't grow. And therefore it's likely not a wetland. However, we have many instances where the poorly drained soils line and the hydrophytic plant line are pretty much always synonymous because we're not always in wet seasons, and we're not always in droughts either. So those are pretty close to the same. The last indicator is what's known as hydrology, and so you have to have a certain amount of area that contributes to a certain wetland to ensure that it actually does have enough water in it to support wetland life. That's not the case here. There are acres and acres that drain down to these wetlands. So the question of whether there's enough hydrology in the area to generate wetlands, the answer will be yes in this case. Now, with that said, we don't like to delineate wetlands in the winter if we can help it. Sometimes we do that for preliminary mapping purposes. But these wetlands were mapped over the course actually of a couple years. So in 2018, Jack was on site, and then Jack has gone back out and redone soils mapping to confirm his wetlands and to confirm soils on site. And he's also done soil test pitting on site where he reviewed test pits and then also re-reviewed his line to ensure that over the course of the last couple of years, as we're maturing our project design, that wetland hasn't changed in scope or size.
So the test pitting, I know that they did that in the winter because they came through our yard and there was snow on the ground. But What you were saying about the hydrophytic plant growth, is there a specific time of year that you would have to assess for that those plants wouldn't be there in a particular season? Or can you confirm that without having to do an assessment like that? Can you use like your soil? Just trying to figure out when you said that Jack went back there to do soil mapping, it sounds like that was after the 2018 delineation.
Yes.
Do you know what month that was done?
I'd have to check. I don't have the date in which he did his soil mapping right with me, but I can certainly check for you.
Would it have been before winter or?
I don't want to guess.
Okay, you're not sure. All right. And then about the plant growth, like the time of year, is that something that you have to assess for when you delineate? Do you have to do an assessment to judge that kind of plant growth? The hydrophytic plants that
Yes.
characterize a wetland or?
So yes, hydrophytic plants grow during what's known as the growing season or the spring months. And then they continue to grow throughout the summer, and some of the plants will die off in the fall, but many of the plants remain. So it's not just one plant or two plants. There's a whole book of plants that delineators use. And then in the absence of one plant, they can use another plant for their determination also.
Okay. And so that you're not sure when that would have been done or what season?
The 2018 delineation was done in the fall, I believe.
Yeah, it was the month after we moved in, so that would have been in October. So you think that that's when it was done, October? So, okay. All right.
And Mr. Barry, maybe I could just request that you provide the board a copy of the wetland application made to the state.
Yeah, one was delivered to the clerk, attention, the planning board.
Okay. So we do have a copy at the office, planning board office, of the wetlands analysis and application that was made to the state's Wetlands Bureau that has the majority of that information with a lot more detail.
Okay.
And that's available to you in public, and I perhaps can ask Joanna if she could, I hate to ask her to scan it. If we can get maybe Mr. Barry, you could provide a PDF or.
Yeah, I mean, she's happy to go read the wetland permit. That's fine. And we could probably send along cuts of digital versions of it. But maybe if I could just put together a simple timeline of when things were accomplished, that might save from reading an entire permit package. But any way you want me to do it is fine.
Yeah, and one point of clarification too. So, Mr. Barry, the test pits that were done for like the septic, the 4K areas, those probably would have been done at a separate time. And right, so maybe that was something that could have been done in a winter and would be fine, or probably not. But it looks like from one of the plan sheets, probably 130 or so test pits were done. I think those were for the wetlands delineation, probably. The sheet 3 of 49, which shows about 130 test pits.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
The board might realize by now, I like empirical data. So we go out, we do a round of test pitting. Oftentimes that pitting is then used in the development of a soils map. We then develop the engineering design where we can then go back out and do some additional test pits in the roadway to know where ledge is, do some test pits on lots where we think we know where 4,000 square foot areas are going to be, do some test pits inside of where we think stormwater systems are going to be. Then we finalize our design, and oftentimes we missed. So we missed by 10, 20 feet here, there. So we go back out typically a third time and we make sure we get the test pit right in the area where we want that information. So that's why there are so many pits, and they are done over a series of integrations, I guess, throughout the plan.
Thank you. Any other public wanting to ask a question or? Okay. Seeing none, I'll keep the public hearing open for, obviously we're going to have a continuance here. There's some more information that's needed from the applicant to continue the review. So unless board members have any further questions or the applicant has any further questions, I guess I'd entertain a motion to continue it.
Mr. Chairman, this is Susan. I want to ask the applicant if July 22nd is a good date to reconvene before I make a motion.
Mr. Berry, do you think the information you can provide back to us would give us a little bit of time to review that before that meeting date?
I guess
that's 2 weeks out.
Yeah, I mean, we can shoot for that, and if we're not ready or haven't supplied it in enough time for the board's review, we can simply ask for a 2-week continuance.
Okay.
Okay, in that case, Mr. Chairman, I move that we continue case number 20-003-SUB, application for a 14-lot subdivision from Robert DeBerto to July 22nd at 7 p.m.
Second.
That was Gary Anderson to second it. Let me just roll call. Ed Veal.
Yes.
Sue Mooney.
Yes.
Tyler Eaton.
Yes.
Joe Clough.
Yes.
Gary Anderson.
Yes.
And Leanne Gass.
Yes.
And Dirks, yes. So that would be continued as such.
Mr. Chair, just before Mr. Berry steps away, I saw there was a question that popped up from Mr. Kerwood.
Okay, the wetland material will be available to public as a PDF. So I think so.
I can make it available. That
Yeah.
way, Joanna doesn't have to scan it.
Okay, that would be helpful. Thank you.
And then Joanna will just post it online.
Yep.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Kerwood, you'll be able to download that from our website, the town's website, similar to the location where the plans are. If you go to the town website under the planning department, there is an area that you can download the documents. But give it a week before those are up there.
Thank you.
Yep. Go ahead, Joanna.
What is going to be the deliverable deadline?
It's a good question. You know, we're going to have to coordinate a little bit with CMA. Let's make sure we have it the Friday before the meeting. So whatever date that comes in, if you don't have it available, that gives us Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to review the material.
I don't work Fridays.
Is that it's Thursday?
Do you want the 16th, Thursday?
I will make it Thursday.
Okay. So deliverables by the 16th.
Okay, thank
By
you.
noon. By noon, right? I need time to get everything out. Good deal? Okay.
That was a yes.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, we still have another application here, so let's move along. Thank you, Mr. Berry.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Yep, you too. Let me jump right into the next case here. That's case 20004 LLA. This is an application from Linda R. Fernald and James S. Fernald for a lot line adjustment to transfer 0.99 acres from map 66 lot 1 sublot 4 known as 114 Raymond Road to map 66 lot 1 sublot 3 known as 118 Raymond Road. And I'd like to ask if the applicant is here and can speak to this application. Is the applicant available?
That might be the phone number that's muted. Let's unmute it and see if it is.
Let's just unmute it.
All right, I've just unmuted the.
Okay, yes, this is Linda Fernald. I am here.
Oh, great. So
James is also here.
Great. We've received the application for the lot line adjustment, and would like to just hear from you of what the application is in a little bit more detail.
Okay, we're proposing to transfer that 0.996 or whatever from lot 4 to lot 3 so that we can get the existing landfill completely in lot 3. There's no change to the frontage of the lots, it's just simply the sideline.
Okay. And then the ownership will stay the same between these two lots?
Correct. They're both owned by me.
Wow. Okay. So I guess as a procedural order here, we have to accept this application and then review and act on the application. So let me ask Steph and Joanna. I didn't get a chance to review your review. If you could summarize that, that would be great.
Are
Sure.
you talking to me?
No, sorry, talking to Steph Casella.
Sure.
Okay.
So, all the, or do you want me to just address acceptance?
Yeah, let's get it accepted, and then if there's other comments, we can.
Yeah, aside from the pieces that Joanna processes, all the application materials appear to be in order according to the checklist of what's needed for a lot line adjustment.
So if this has been reviewed and if anybody else's board members have comments, the first order would be to accept the application as complete as recommended.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the application as complete for case 20-004-LLA. This is Mr. Beal.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Tyler Eaton, there's a second. Any other discussion? So I'll roll call, and I did not reseat Ian for Leanne, so I'm leaving the power in Leanne. So let's keep on going that. But Ian, if you have comments, please speak up. You just don't have any voting powers. So roll call: Ed Veal.
Yes.
Sue Mooney.
Yes.
Tyler Eaton.
Yes.
Joe Clough.
Yes.
Gary Anderson.
Yes.
And Leanne Gast.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. So the application is accepted. We now act on that. So I want to ask if there's I guess, Steph, you want to just go through the other ones that you were going to mention?
Sure. You know, like you said, the point of the application was to get the entirety of that landfill onto one lot. There's none of the frontage is going to change. Both lots are above 2 acres. I believe they're 6 acres. One's 4 and one's 6. Yep. So nothing's going to really impact buildable area there. The only thing that I wanted to note was that there's a note number 2 on the plan set was a little bit confusing. It noted that there was an easement for the landfill, and I actually discussed this with Mrs. Fernald and the surveyor, and they have agreed to take that easement part out because I guess it was an original plan, but it did not come to fruition. So that last sentence stating that there's an easement is going to be eliminated. So I would just encourage the board to make that a condition of approval that that was changed on the plan set.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Fernald, I have a question that I'd be remiss to ask of what encompasses, what does a landfill contain?
I'm going to pass this over to Jim. He's been in charge of that.
Okay.
Hi. That landfill, we used to call them dumps, that was closed in between 1960 and 1970. And it was a local landfill or dump that our family used, and people from the lake used to come in there and dump during the summer. And then I believe at some point in time, the state didn't allow any more private landfills or dumps, so it was closed. And what is in there is basically cans and bottles, and there's a very, very insignificant, if there is such a thing, amount of not asphalt, but asbestos. And shingles. There was one small wheelbarrow full of that. And then when we tested the site, there was also some very small particles of asbestos. So what we're attempting to do is to pull in the edges, make the landfill area smaller. I've got 2 engineers working on that now to come up with a plan. And
it's registered with the state.
Submit to the state. It is registered to the state now as a pre-1981 landfill. So we'll be working with them. And then hopefully this fall, but who knows, we'll pull those edges in, flatten it out, and cover it properly with state approval. And then at that time, what happens is we will resurvey the exterior perimeter of the landfill, and then that area will be recorded, as I understand it, with the at the Registry of Deeds, and that area will pass with the deed on that particular lot. It will stay with the deed of that lot.
Okay, well, I appreciate that information with the application.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's good to know that the state is involved and this is being handled appropriately. I guess that was just the main concern.
Right. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Is there any questions from any other board members?
It's Mr. Veal. Just to confirm, lot 3 currently doesn't have any structures. There's no house or anything like that. It looks like it's just driveway and approved septic location. Is that correct?
Yes, lot 3 is completely vacant.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions? That seems like a fairly simple lot line adjustment.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Gary Anderson, just I was curious more about the easement that was being let go, or what that was going to be.
That came from Peter. we never really discussed any easement. He termed it that for some reason, why I don't know. But it won't be an easement. It will be, the landfill will become permanently a part of that particular lot. And nothing can be built on it, and it must be maintained so the trees don't grow up in it and tip over and dispose of the fill within the landfill. And that particular lot can still remain a lot, can be sold, but may not be. Right now, I think our plans are to use that particular lot as a access to backland, because we have a road up into it. So a term came from Peter. I don't really know how to answer that. It's up to ask Peter, I guess.
So there isn't a legal written easement. It's a terminology that was used.
Correct. Yeah, there won't be an easement. Okay. It will just be a lot, and with that
registered dump,
registered landfill, that will show on the map, and that will stay with that particular lot forever. It will be written into any deed. And the plan, once that landfill is complete, as I said, we'll resurvey it, and that will go on the plot of that lot and remain so in perpetuity.
So I guess I turn to the board for some action on this application if there's no comments or questions.
Did you open the public hearing, close the public hearing?
Do we have to public hear for a lot line adjustment? If the answer is yes, then I'll open the public hearing. Is there any public here that would like to speak for or against this application? Anyone against the application, I would like them to speak first. Anyone for the application can speak after that. And seeing that there is no other public, I will close the public hearing.
Formality.
Thanks, Ed. Just for that, Ed, are you going to make a motion?
I will, yeah. It looks like this is pretty straightforward. Everything stays within setbacks, and the lots are plenty of size, and we're not creating a new lot. So, Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept case 20-004-LLA, or approve, I'm sorry. Let me start over. Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve case 20-004-LLA.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'm giving that to Sue. And any discussion on that? If not, then I just do a roll call. Ed Veal.
Yes.
Sue Mooney.
Yes.
Tyler Eaton.
Yes.
Joe Clough.
Yes.
Gary Anderson.
Yes.
And Leanne Gast.
yes.
Great. Well, that is approved, so thank you very much.
And what do we need to do from here? You need a Mylar?
Yes.
Anything else?
I'll let Joanna answer that.
I will be sending a notice of decision that'll include all of that information in it.
Good.
Wasn't
Okay,
there
thank you.
something that was supposed to be considered in that for staff?
It was the note. It was the note to eliminate the note with for the easement.
Was that included in Ed's
I thought I heard it.
I didn't include it in the motion, but I thought we were all set because the applicant's rep had agreed to remove it already. So I didn't make a condition of the approval.
So to the applicant, just have the Mylar reflect that it's not an easement.
Okay, will do.
I was going to say, other standard conditions are that, monuments be set and the deed has to be passed for this lot line adjustment to really be in effect. We can sign the plan, but it's not effective until the deed passes.
Okay, the monuments are set, I believe.
Yes.
And
All
I
right.
believe you have that statement from Peter.
Yep.
I'm getting a lot of nods. Thank you.
Okay, so are we done?
Yes. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so let's given the time, let's quickly move through any remaining items here with staff and board updates. I'll just go around the room and I'm going to pick Joanna first.
So the big thing that I need to talk to this board about tonight is that we have the Mill Pond Road case coming to a close here. I will have Mylars and other plans that will need to be signed, and we haven't come up with how we're going to do that where we're not meeting in person yet.
Okay.
So can we discuss that?
I would say, is it available at the planning office?
It will be once it's here. I wanted to know ahead of time how you wanted me to handle it. Send out a blast and request at least 4 members come?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think out of us, we'll find 4 members that will brave the pandemic with some masks on and come down and sign the Mylar at a safe 6-foot distance.
Okay.
And we'll wipe the pen. Make sure there's wipes
Will do.
available.
All the rooms have kits now for all that kind of stuff, so we're good.
All right.
And the second thing is right now the recording equipment for in-person meetings is still not fixed. Hopefully within the next week or so. My recommendation is 1 more meeting at least via Zoom, and then hopefully by the 22nd I will have word whether that is repaired and if we can meet in person in August. Sound good?
Yeah, this is working pretty well, I think.
Okay.
So
does that mean the board doesn't want to meet in person at all, even if it does get repaired?
My suggestion would be we keep monitoring the governor's orders.
Yeah.
Reevaluating at every meeting or in between.
Yep.
Right now, the governor's order says that we can continue via Zoom, but we can also meet in person if we'd like.
Let's continue via Zoom at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Anything else? Nope, she went mute. Steph?
No updates from me or SRPC at this time.
Ed?
Just that we had our last, most likely in-person town meeting. Just under 200 people showed up, and a good day. It went well. People were respectful, but I think that was 280 or 290 plus town meetings. So it was kind of a bittersweet day to see that go away. But so next year we'll be an SB2 town in full, town and school. So everything will be on paper ballots. It'll be a big change for a little town of Nottingham.
Thanks, Ed. Gary?
Just a tidbit. I apologize if this is redundant. I'm not sure who else may receive this stuff from SRPC, but it was just something that it's a grant that's available to self-employed folks like myself. It's called from Main Street Relief Fund. It's called. So it's for the COVID effects basically, and so there's a deadline to apply. I think it's July 17th. Up to 50,000.
I thought that was a non-profit. I thought that was for non-profits.
I thought it was a for-profit. and unless I read it incorrectly.
Steph is shaking her head yes.
I believe this one is for profit.
Okay, thank you, Steph.
Mhm.
Thank you, Steph.
Tyler, any selectmen updates?
No, they didn't meet after the town meeting because it was Saturday, so
Yep.
we'll meet again Monday.
Okay, thank you. Ian?
Nothing for me.
Joe Clough?
Nothing for me.
Leanne?
Nothing for me.
Sue?
Just a couple things. The Nottingham Trails Committee met last Thursday on the 2nd, and again, we sat outside the Van Dam School with social distancing and masks. It was very productive. And the Conservation Commission is intending on meeting in person this coming Monday on the 13th. And the room that we've been assigned should accommodate people that show up. That's it.
Okay. Buzz?
I'm all set.
Okay. I don't have a lot. I'm going to save my master plan discussion for maybe the next meeting. I do want to see where we're at advancing things. I think we haven't talked about it for a while, so let's get that back on our radar.
And Joanna, I'm sorry, can you give us an overview of what we have coming up for the next meeting, 7/22? I know we have the case from tonight that we continued.
And just keep it to anything that is specifically noticed. Notifications are out.
So our next meeting currently just has the Mitchell Road case on it.
Thank
Steph,
you.
I'm not missing anything, right?
I don't believe so.
I just want to, my statement was more to just caution us when we are being recorded and in public. If an application is not submitted, then it is not public yet. So when we do make announcements of what might be coming up, we can be vague, but just not specific.
Appreciate that. So, Mr. Chairman, if there's nothing else, I'll move that we adjourn.
Minutes.
I rescind my motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move, sorry.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, this is Susan. I move that we accept the minutes of June 24th, 2020.
Second.
Motion and a second from Gary. Ed?
Yes.
Sue?
Yes.
Tyler?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Leanne?
Yes.
Dirk? Yep.
Before we adjourn, can I ask real quick? First question is, if we don't have the the Mitchell Road case coming to us on the 22nd, do we want to cancel the meeting or do we want to do a master plan discussion?
Could I put in my 2 cents worth?
We can't hear you. I think you're very staticky.
Try again. If we have no cases, can we do master plan and possibly talk about the transportation committee, which is kind of floated
Similar.
away?
Yep.
I'd like to group on that.
Okay. Yeah, it's worth go ahead, Steph.
And maybe upcoming zoning updates. Can we fit in that too?
So
Sounds good.
that answers the question. Yeah, let's not cancel the meeting. It would be good to touch base on some of those. We haven't talked about them for a while. We'll promise to keep it shorter.
Is it possible to get, I know we have a list running of kind of like high priority and stuff that we were looking at last fall that we kicked down the road because of the updates that we were doing. Is it possible to kind of get that list back to everybody? Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. All right.
Go ahead, Ed.
I'm going to make a motion here I'm moving that we adjourn.
All those in favor, sign off. Have a good
Aye.
evening, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Everyone.
Good night.
Bye.